At last, we just got relief in the crypto market. In today's video, I'll be talking about whether or not this relief rally can be sustained and how Ethereum could be on its way to an all-time high if Bitcoin sits in place. If you enjoy the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. Without further ado, let's jump right into the video. All right, first things first, taking a look at the Bitcoin price action. What you can see here is that the more bullish case scenario that I outlined in yesterday's video seems to be playing out, but we cannot be carried away quite yet. So what I want to see here is this rounded bottom. And in yesterday's video, if you watched, I told you that the most bullish case scenario for Bitcoin and also for Ethereum would be if Bitcoin were to make a higher low on its way down. And this is actually what's happening right now, right in front of our eyes. And what I mean by this is that we set this first low over here when everyone was panicking, which is when we entered our Bitcoin long position. And now after making an all-time high, which was actually a higher high compared to this high, we are now making a higher low. This is exactly what we want to see if there is to be continued upside, not just for Bitcoin, but for Ethereum. Now, you know my base case if you've been watching the channel for the past 2 weeks. I do think that Ethereum can be making a brand new all-time high. All we really need is for Bitcoin to behave as I've been talking about. So right here, you can see that we are holding this support level. The lowest wick point was right in the low 112K. And you can see that down here, we went below 112K. And so this is technically a higher low. Now I want to see some continuation for Bitcoin, ideally holding the top of this range as support and coinciding with the value area low that you can see within this range. If we can make it above here and consolidate, then I do think that Ethereum will be making an all-time high. It feels like I'm repeating myself here, and a lot of people were giving me flack because of the fact that I said ETH would be making an all-time high during this Bitcoin correction. But all we really need here is for Bitcoin to consolidate around these levels, perhaps a little bit higher. We don't need Bitcoin to pump massively for ETH to make that all-time high, because you can see that the trend is still very much our friend with ETH Bitcoin. Ethereum continues to outperform Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, if I zoom in here on the daily time frame, you can see that we're seeing a massive green candle for ETH against Bitcoin. And what does this mean? Well, back to the weekly, you can see that we did get a dump after the previous week's bullish candle, and we ended up eating all that up within 1 day now. So if Bitcoin can sustain this price action, which we need to confirm whether or not this will be the bottom, Ethereum will be putting in an all-time high. I will repeat myself on this topic. Of course, as I always say, we need Bitcoin to behave for Ethereum and other altcoins to have any kind of sustained rally here. But so far, so good. This looks like a higher low. I don't want to get carried away yet, so I will make sure to keep you updated as things develop. But you can see how well Ethereum reacted off of this Bitcoin pump from the lows, a minor pump, and look at the pump that Ethereum got. Now you can see that within this channel that we've been tracking at length, Ethereum actually hit the bottom of the range here when we went below $4,100. Now this is actually an interesting level, because if you're following people on Twitter, a lot of the analysts were saying Ethereum will be going below 4K before an all-time high. And you can see that we tapped into it, front ran it a little bit by $74, and now Ethereum is back within this consolidation zone and actually a little bit above, which is what we want to see here. So what exactly happened? Ethereum came to the bottom of this range, held it as support, and then with this massive wick on the 4-hour time frame, we did hold the bottom of this previous consolidation level, which was crucial in sending Ethereum much higher, where we topped out right around $4,794, depending on which exchange you're looking at. So I still think that the all-time high is entirely possible for ETH. And what I want to see here is, now that we came back in this range, is to actually hold this previous consolidation level as support. And as I'm recording this video right now, if we remove my drawings here, you can see that this is exactly what is happening. We actually wicked to the bottom here, and so as long as Bitcoin remains where it is, or maybe even trickles on a little bit higher, ideally between $116,000 to $118,000, I do think that Ethereum will be making a brand new all-time high before the potential September correction that I've been talking about. Now, I want to address this because August was actually red yesterday when I was looking at this table, but now you can see that we're back in the green. Is it time to celebrate quite yet? I wouldn't say so. We need to see how things play out because we know that Bitcoin has a way of faking out the entire market. But so far so good for ETH, as you can see, popping from the bottom of this range, and now we're at the top of this range. We need to break above here if we are to see all-time highs, and ideally Bitcoin behaves too. ETH Bitcoin, as I said, I really like the way this is going, and this red weekly candle got erased in one day. Let's see what happens. We still have some pretty significant events upcoming this week, and I'll also talk about what's going on with the Fed later in the video. But anyways, looking at the spot ETFs, you can also see that there was 500,000 in outflows for the Bitcoin spot ETF yesterday, and for Ethereum, there was just over 400 million worth of outflows. Now, Ethereum was really picking up, but what I noticed with the spot ETFs is that when we see significant outflows, that tends to mark the local bottom in the market. So let's see how this plays out. Right now, I do think that Bitcoin wants to hold this level as support. I really don't want to see us go lower, to be honest. If we were to start breaking below this level, which is around $112,000, a lot of people's targets, then at that point, I do think that this Ethereum run will likely die out quicker than most people will expect. But because we made a higher low, you can see that the outperformance from Ethereum is quite remarkable at this point in time. But remember, every single time we got to the top of this range, we got rejected and came back down. I really want to see Ethereum break out here to new all-time highs, but Bitcoin has a huge say in whether or not it will do so. Now, USDT dominance. This one is very interesting, and I thought I would show you. You know that we cover this on the channel every couple of weeks, and you can see that USDT dominance actually came back down to the 4% level, which was very, very significant, and we talked about how it could potentially hold as support, as it has done so many times during this massive uptrend. And this is exactly what happened. We held on to it as support. If this were to break, then of course, super bullish for the markets. However, because we held it as support, this is where the negative reaction across the entire crypto market came into play. Now, we don't want to see us go in this direction where USDT dominance rises, because naturally that would mark a top in the market. This may be the direction where we see the September correction for the crypto asset class, and then perhaps we have another lower high here before the last leg lower, which would be the end of the bull market cycle. I still think that Bitcoin will be putting in a new all-time high later in the year, and I also think that ETH will be going well over $5,000. But let's see how things develop. Now, taking a look at the liquidation heat maps, you can see that now there's a ton of liquidity to the upside, but some people started longing the low too. We cannot ignore this. There is always a chance that we come back down and wick into this, but as I said, I don't want to see us go below this previous low that we set over here if we are to see continuation for Ethereum on its way to all-time highs. Now, taking a look at the next liquidation heat map, which is ETH, I wanted to show you here that in the 48-hour time frame, you can see that $4,240 was a significant level. A lot of people had their shorts here, and as you can see, we liquidated those shorts, and it's crazy to get the reaction because as soon as we tapped into this level, boom, right back down, and now we're back up, which is what I like to see. On the 1 week time frame though, which is very bullish, look at all of the liquidity to the upside. I'm telling you, ETH desperately wants to move higher. We just need Bitcoin to behave. And so, taking a look at these charts, it paints the exact same picture. On the 30-day time frame, most of the liquidity for Bitcoin is built to the upside, and you can observe this by how much more cumulative short liquidation leverage there is on the right here, all the way above 13 billion, and on the left, cumulative long liquidation leverage, 7 billion. So about a 2x there. And using this metric to take a look at Ethereum, what you can see here is that it paints a little bit of a different picture. A lot more people are bullish on ETH at this point in time, and so please be a little bit cautious. Yes, we can make an all-time high, which is what I'm actually gunning for, but there will likely be some movements back down. We've seen historically that when Ethereum makes an all-time high, it can dump as much as 20 to 30% before pumping back up afterwards. So once we make that all-time high, if you're in a trade, I would be taking profits aggressively. And that reminds me, if you want to trade the crypto markets, you have all of the links in the description down below. We have weeks where we still have 2 days left for this Ethereum airdrop position. All you need to do is sign up with my link. You can download the Weeks app afterwards, and then you get a free $1,000 Ethereum position airdrop. You can go long or short Ethereum, and any profits that you make go directly into your pocket. And if you make any deposits, for example, 10,000 USDT, you can earn a $4,000 Ethereum airdrop position. Again, any profits you make directly into your pocket. This is a huge opportunity, and there's only 2 days left for this promotion. So go ahead and sign up with the third link in my description down below. If you want to follow all my own trade setups, you have that first link, which brings you to my free Telegram community. DM me the word premium and I would be happy to onboard you, where you can see all of my own active trades. And of course, we have Phoenix as an alternative exchange down below, where you can actually deposit and trade to earn Solana and $1,000 in cashback. Now, as we wrap up this video, let's take a look at some of the news. I mean, first of all, I thought this was absolutely hilarious. We have Tom Lee, who is the huge ETH whale at this point, continuing to accumulate Ethereum as Michael Saylor is doing with Bitcoin, and he's really leading the pack here. But he posted on his Twitter that Ethereum will be undergoing a minor correction. This was a few days ago. Pullback to 4,075 to 4,150 by midweek. Pullbacks are healthy. And you can see that his quant actually talked about this in an email thread. And what do you notice here? Well, this actually happened to perfection, right on schedule, and ETH went down to $4,064 before pumping right back up. Now, I wouldn't trust this guy with any kind of technical analysis or anything like that, but it's just funny how accurate this one call was, and honestly, I just thought I'd share it with you. Now, I wanted to also talk about what's going on with the Fed, because the officials are now worried about a slowdown before the week jobs report. The minute from the Fed's meeting show growing concerns about an economic slowdown. Several officials expected weak growth in the second half of the year, citing slower income gains hurting consumer spending. These concerns came before July's job report, which cut May and June job growth estimates by 258K, likely deepening worries about a weakening labor market. Now, we've been covering this on the channel at length, but despite all of this, the Feds can only justify rate cuts with one data point, and that is the labor market. But they came out today and said that inflation risks are outweighing employment risks in the Fed minutes. As we saw in September 2024, the Fed cut by 50 basis points and immediately blamed the labor market. If the Fed is using inflation as a gauge for rate cuts, then rate cuts are nowhere near. Core CPI inflation is back above 3%, and PPI inflation just jumped 0.9% month over month, which was its biggest jump in 3 years. That said, the last Fed meeting happened before the last job reports. Regardless, today's Fed minutes were a major blow to the Fed pivot camp. Now, the Fed pivot camp, we can talk about quantitative tightening, quantitative easing, but all you need to know is that the odds are still in our favor for rate cuts. But the transition from quantitative tightening to quantitative easing may not actually happen as soon as people would like to see. And naturally, this isn't favorable for the altcoin market. Don't get me wrong, I still think that we will have some kind of altcoin season, but taking a look at this chart, taking a look at how Ethereum is outperforming, my altcoin portfolio is really just with ETH. I have a ton of ETH sitting in spot looking for that new all-time high. And that sums up today's video. If we are to see Ethereum make a brand new all-time high before the potential September correction, the low for Bitcoin should be in now. If Bitcoin continues to trickle on up, then we will likely see Ethereum continue to outperform as it has done on this relief rally thus far. If you enjoyed the content, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you in tomorrow's video.